Welcome. I would like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for the town of Haymarket for this evening, April 14th, 2026. Roll call, please.
Baker,
Here.
Young,
Present.
Mahmood. I don't have your last name on this sheet.
Yeah, Mahmoud Omoria, present here.
Sorry about that. Kress,
Present.
Gonzalez.
Present. Thank you. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This now brings us to citizens' time. Are there any citizens wishing to address the Planning Commission this evening? Seeing none, are there any emails? None received. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the minute approval. Are there any edits to the minutes as presented in the packet? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes for the public hearing regular monthly meeting from January as well as our last meeting in March?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes for Planning Commission regular meeting for March 10th, 2026.
A second?
I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll proceed. It's approved. And our first item for this evening is consideration of rezoning number 2025-001, the rezoning for 14600 Washington Street. I think, Lydia, will you please lead us in the discussion?
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to go over the changes that I had, or the requests that the town had discussed during the last meeting. The changes that the town had requested in the last meeting and how they were updated. I had met with the developer between our last meeting and today, and we aligned everything that needed to be adjusted in the narrative and on the GDP. The first is that per our discussion last meeting, the TIA was expanded to do a 20-year analysis of the roundabout, and it was concluded that it would function accordingly, and that the roundabout would be anticipated to operate accordingly within the 20 years. I believe that is the only thing that changed in the TIA since the last time we met. In terms of inclusions in the narrative, the narrative has been updated to include the proposed pedestrian safety enhancements, including the crosswalk, the flashing beacon, and the adjustments to the curb leading from Green Hill Crossing to the development, as well as the brick hardscapes are indicated in the narrative on the eastern portion side of the development coming in. Additionally, we discussed that the rear townhomes, and is mentioned in the narrative, that the rear townhomes will have cantilever decks included in them. This is subject to the ARB guidelines and ARB approval. The GDP was updated to reflect that townhomes 4, 5, 26, and 27 are actually 22-foot units. They're depicted on the GDP, and it is mentioned in the narrative as well. This is different from the surrounding units. We are also having further discussions regarding the phasing of the development. The R2 townhome development is subject to the approval of the demolition permit for the back end of the school building. So that has been noted in the narrative, as well as the parking and in the front is subject to ARB approval of that waiver as well. The town has also noted that the GDP has also noted that the pedestrian breezeway on the school building leading from one side of the commercial parking to the other side so that pedestrians can have ease of access from one side of the building to the other, as well as no parking signs to be located on Blythe Drive, subject to VDOT approval as well. All that has been noted in the narrative in the GDP. And finally, we are discussing some buffering and fencing along Washington Street and between the two commercial properties. There is a waiver. There will be a requested waiver for the fencing between the two commercial properties on the Prince William, between our town border and the Prince William County border. There is a current fence line there in place for Robinson Manor. We're working closely with town engineer Katie to try and adjust the current parking setup so that we can accommodate another fence line. Accommodate additional landscape buffering in there so that we don't have two fence lines butting up against one another. We're worried about landscaping growing in between the two fence lines and how that would be taken care of for future reference, as well as the fencing that'll go along Washington Street. It was included in your packet what they are proposing that is subject to ARB. One type of fencing they're proposing reflects what is currently being in use for Green Hill Crossing. And all reference town zoning code and references to the Lewis home and the school building are aligned and up to date. Are there any questions regarding what was updated previously? Okay. So with that, this application has undergone substantial revision in response to town staff and planning commission feedback. Based on staff review, the proposal is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and 2026 strategic plan. Staff is therefore recommending approval of the Schoolhouse Commons rezoning application to planning. Therefore, the staff is recommending approval of the Schoolhouse Commons rezoning to the Planning Commission. This recommendation is based on 5 key findings. The first is this rezoning serves as an appropriate residential transition. The introduction of 50 townhomes complements the density that is required, 8 units per acre. And it creates a logical transition between existing residential that we have on Blight to the commercial use on the other side on the Prince William County line. And therefore, the townhomes create a strategic buffer between the pre-existing commercial space and the single-family homes in the town park that currently exists on the other side. And it also includes green space and a community gathering area to support additional residents coming into town. As a second point, we're noting is the preservation of the historic resources. The developer has taken great strides to include and retain the Gainesville District 19 school building and the Lewis home, which are both historic to the town. The structures are not just preserved, but they're incorporated into the development. And in a meaningful way, the school building is going to support local small businesses, and the Lewis home serves as a community center, and it will have green space surrounding it with additional picnic-style seating as well. And it's that inclusion of these historic places reflects a strong commitment to protecting the town's cultural heritage. As a third point, this development supports local businesses. It's supporting the existing commercial uses by working with the current business owners to relocate into the school building, specifically Cookies and Cream into the school building, and even the dance studio into another portion of the building potentially. The schoolhouse building, after what will remain following the demolition, would be about 31,000 square feet of usable commercial space. Excuse me. This coordination with the current tenants and reuse of the school building and improvements on the school building really reinforces the small town character that we're striving for and economic vitality. The fourth point is the alignment with town plans. This development advances the goals for both the comprehensive plan and the 2026 strategic plan, which was recently adopted. It promotes pedestrian-friendly mixed-use environment, which includes sidewalks and bike lanes. The sidewalk of which will reflect what is currently in town with certain pavers, and in streetscape improvements, including benches along the streetscape, correct landscaping, the fencing that was previously mentioned, brick hardscapes, and a new marquee sign. As well as it provides open space and gathering areas, including a gazebo that'll be located on the western side of the property to buffer the schoolhouse building and commercial parking from Washington Street. All of this supports walkability and connectivity and quality of life, the inclusion of a crosswalk from Green Hill Crossing and the inclusion of no parking signs along VDOT really centers the development as walkable and friendly and family friendly and just kind of a great place to congregate. As a fifth point, the development has great compatibility with town character. A lot of what the developer has suggested and how they have aligned both how the townhomes will look and how the development looks reflect the town's historic aesthetic, including brick hardscapes and the style of fencing that they have suggested, and preferring additional landscaping over other fencing styles, all creates a very welcoming and historic aesthetic. It also emphasizes small town feel and cohesive visual identity, so it'll make a nice transition from the town park to single family homes to this residential and commercial mixed use space. But it doesn't quite overwhelm the site. There's plenty of green space in the front and in the rear, separating the development from Alexandria's Keep, as well as the green space on the western side of the property. I'm sorry, the eastern side of the property, where the gazebo will be. Some additional considerations that we have are the proposed infrastructure improvements support safe access and circulation. Again, this just is emphasizing the inclusion of the sidewalks and the bike lanes. We do have a bike lane that runs through town, and they will be extending that across their property. The traffic impacts are minimized at the implication of a by right commercial developer. VDOT levels of service are currently characterized by letter grades. A D letter grade is considered acceptable. That is defined on page 4 of the staff report. And currently, as it is defined in the TIA, the supposed traffic impact will be an acceptable level of service. The applicant has been really responsive to prior feedback, including updates to the traffic impact study, including the requested 20-year outlook for the roundabout that's in Prince William County. They've created additional access points, including a secondary entry exit on Blight, and they've also consolidated current entry exit points on Washington Street and added a right-hand taper. I also want to add that if the property were to be developed by right as 8 acres of commercial. Traffic for commercial is estimated to be 8 times what it's currently suggested within the rezoning. I provide the numbers for the peak hours on page 4 as well. As it is defined in the TIA, weekday morning peak hours are from 8 to 9 a.m. Weekday afternoon peak hours are 4:30 to 5:30, and Saturday peak hours are from 5:45 to 6:45 p.m. Rough with the amount of commercial square footage and the 58 townhomes, this is going to generate approximately 24 a.m. peak hour trips and 26 a.m. Peak hour trips. So 24 in the morning and 26 in the evening. And that evaluates 6 intersections within the defined studied area. And those are included in the TIA as well. The proposal represents a balanced approach to growth, combining residential development, historic preservation, and economic support, and it aligns with town goals while maintaining community character. And therefore, staff formally recommends the approval and requests that the Planning Commission forward this recommendation to the Town Council. We can open up to questions.
Thank you. Who wants to begin?
If you guys don't have any immediate questions, then we'll just turn it over to Siobhan for his presentation.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Continue.
Thanks, Lydia. I'm Kirk Johnson. This is Siobhan Dosky, my business partner. We are Greystone Companies based in Haymarket, in the county portion of Haymarket. Thank you, Lydia. She covered most of what we had today, with just really updating the changes that have been made since we started the process. You all recognize the school building, which we're preserving. The plan, as you can see there, let me see if this pointer's going. Yeah, it's going. Okay. So we added the major thing that we added was the Green Hill crosswalk there. Some of the prior updates were the streetscape all along Washington, and Lydia mentioned the brick fronts on these townhomes, and we're also doing curb and gutter on this side of Blight, along with the no parking, assuming VDOT will allow that. The pedestrian pass-through that she mentioned is right here between the original section of the school building and the middle section. And back here is where the demolition of the 1960s addition to that school building will be demolished, so that we have more parking and better flow now around the commercial building and throughout the project with this connection to Blight. And yeah, we've added we closed what's now an exit from the property right here. We're closing that, consolidating the entrance exit to this location, adding a turn lane and the bike lane that she mentioned. And that's we've kept a nice buffer here for Alexander's Keep. We faced the decks all inward to the alleyways on both sections, all the townhomes. And really important to us is to try and make this commercial building more viable and create a place where the tenants can thrive. So we're making a lot of improvements to the building itself, or will be, in addition to the pass-through, just to accommodate the tenants that are there and to shuffle things around to make sure that everyone has a place, and that we have a thriving commercial building there.
Thanks, Kurt. Okay, I'll not read through all these, but you're welcome to. We've tried to work hard on incorporating a lot of the community and town comments. I think we started probably, I'm guessing, earlier than a lot of developers. We met with Planning Commission and Town Council before we submitted. I got a lot of feedback then, tried to incorporate it early. And along the way, we've been revising things, and hopefully people have seen that we worked hard to, try to make this fit into the town and be something that the town values. We recognize there's no denying there are some traffic issues in town. We do believe that this is the best alternative to the commercial that is by right. As Lydia mentioned, residential fits in, we feel, a lot better. I think we mentioned before that when we were first approached by the property owner, they'd asked us about, because of our background, a lot of commercial, including hotel and stuff. And it's, would be a very difficult transition from Blight and even across the street at Green Hill to, dense commercial. We feel like this fits in a lot better, and we'll minimize traffic as an impact. We're enhancing the Washington streetscape and enhancing vehicular and pedestrian safety on Washington and within the site itself. We're investing millions to ensure the current tenant success in the overall property, enhancing Washington streetscape, the crosswalk to Green Hill Crossing, the entrance, building structure, stormwater, and other areas of the site, besides the development of the townhomes. We're going to remove all the stored trailers and some of the other things that make it less appealing right now, and really just clean up the site for Robinson Manor and the people that live right up against it. And, as Kirk mentioned, we want to make sure that the tenants there thrive and do well and are successful, and that it really is an asset for the town. I know right now, I think a lot of people go there and really enjoy the places that are there. And lastly, we want to stress that we believe the choice isn't between the open fields, which I know early on people were like the open fields. Everybody likes open fields. It's not between that. It's really between a by right commercial dense development, potentially dense development, and this residential plan, which is about 1/8 the traffic that the other will carry. And that's really it. So, any questions?
Sorry, for the fencing and where's that going to be going on Blythe, or is that going on the backside of?
It's going along here
Gotcha.
and along there.
Okay.
And again, it is subject to ARB. What we did was
Yeah.
we looked at what's been allowed and submitted that, just so that there was some reference, but that it's still going to be subject to ARB approval.
There's an additional waiver going that they'll submit that's between the current commercial building on the Prince William County side, or I'm sorry,
No, they have.
yes, between the residential Robinson Manor and where our current. So there's a waiver there. There's just not enough space for how their shared parking works out. But the Robinson Manor already has a 6-foot fence there. So we'll be adjusting for additional landscaping in that area, because if you put the two fences up next to each other, the space in between will get unruly, and then it becomes an issue about who has to care for it. Yeah.
And it does run, like Kirk was pointing,
Yeah.
from there to all the way to about there.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Robinson Manor fence is actually on the property line.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
They have a buffer.
Yeah, it cuts off before that main building. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question if I may. I mean, I know it's probably just.
I'm sorry, it's not a public hearing.
No,
So I apologize.
Can you clarify on the parking for the commercial use?
Can we clarify?
Yeah.
Parking?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, it's,
All that parking is commercial, but I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that this here and this here is allocated to residential,
guest, residential.
guest
guests.
residential.
The parking spaces will be labeled as guest parking.
Yeah, based on your documentation, like you have 116 parking for residential.
Do you mean,
16, yeah.
yes, okay, yes.
116 for residential and the rest for the commercial.
Yes.
I'm asking because like, if you check the situation right now, there are more than 150 vehicles right now for the commercial use.
Right.
This take us for, like, we expect more than that number.
We're removing some of the commercial, and also right now, because of the way the building goes all the way to about here now, you'll find that even though these will get pretty full, they don't take up all the spaces of the property.
Especially in the.
Yeah, in that back, it's all trailers. If you look back there, they've got trailers parked all the way across the parking. They've got usually, and we've gone there at all different times to check. And they will have, it's actually back here, I think, but that parking will usually be, not usually, we've never had it where it was above this number of parking spaces, and we're taking away some of the commercial. And this access, this drive aisle and adding this parking really puts the parking right, very close to the tenants, which is, a key thing for business owners is to have close parking. So, even though it is less in that regard, it's more than they're using and much closer than they're using it.
It's more per square foot because we're taking away 6,500 square feet of building. And like Siobhan said, we're spreading it around the building more so that even there's tenants back back here, so they'll have parking in front of their businesses. And this pedestrian walkthrough will allow, no matter where you park, to be able to get to wherever you want to go.
Yeah, so just to note that, so the commercial is, the requirement is 130 spaces currently.
Commercial,
The commercial would require 130, and we're providing 132.
130 based on what?
Based on the zoning ordinance requirements.
Okay.
And
Within our zoning ordinance, we have different use types broken out. And so it is based on the different use types that are in the structure. And we ask them to do a calculation based on who's currently there or who they projected to be there in that space. And so then we calculate the required number from there. And then going forward, if it is approved or how we operate it now, if they have a change in tenant use, we are always checking that calculation to ensure that it is still within what is allowable and what's required when they get new tenants in the spaces.
So as an example, restaurant requires a lot more than office. And so in what we did, we knew that some of the, like cookies and cream would potentially be going into this part of the building. So we took away some of the office, which is a much lower requirement, and added restaurant, which jacked that number up from what it would have been, just to make sure we were accommodating it and reflecting it.
We also had our traffic engineers study the parking, and their analysis showed that we'll have an excess of parking on the whole site.
We have done mixed developments where there are different uses. And, even though we're tagging these as, for residential, we have found that those studies that are done for mixed use usually work very well. When one group needs it, The other group often doesn't. So when you have situations like that, tenants or the residential will sometimes need a space overnight because somebody's staying over. And all the units are empty. I mean, all the commercial's empty and vice versa, you'll find. Now, it doesn't really, we're designating these because we were asked to, but typically it works very well when you allow them to flow. And in that calculation for residential, all these will have garages. And the 2 parking spaces that are being considered, every house actually has 4, but we're only allowed to consider 2 of them.
So each home will have a driveway, 2 spaces in a driveway and 2 spaces in the garage. But by code, we can only count 2, but we actually have 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may I ask a question of our applicants?
Yes.
Thank you. Can you guys talk through a little bit more of the traffic concerns? I think that this has been a point of contention and question that a lot of us have had during the entirety of the process. Possibly even something you might bring the traffic engineer up to discuss through some of the different points that you looked at in this study and how they're really impacted at peak times and your familiarity with those points during peak times. How was the survey data collected? And if you guys have been there on site to kind of observe how this is happening at peak time. And I will say directly in relation to some of our points that we've talked about in meetings being Green Hill Crossing Drive, Coach Way, and then further down at St. Paul Drive as well, when we asked you guys to look at expanding that and including it, please.
Called up. So I'll just go a little bit of a background on how we scoped the study and then get into some of the specific points. But just to kind of talk through what the process is. When the application is first submitted, we met with the town, we met with VDOT to scope what the parameters of the study should be. So that's how we determine the study area, determine the intersections. And I think from the very beginning, Green Hill Crossing and Blight Drive were brought up as a point of emphasis and making sure we were paying attention to those streets, which makes sense with the context of this site. So we did go collect data. We have been in the field. We have done observations. So we have to do that to validate our existing counts. We then grow the traffic to a future out year and then look at that scenario. And then we add our site trips on top of that and look at that scenario. So those are the different scenarios that we compare, and that's mandated by VDOT. That's kind of their typical process. Specifically for this site, one thing I did want to note, because there was a question the last time we were here for the growth rate, we use a 2% annual growth. We did look back at the 10-year historic data for the town, and the typical annual growth rate along Washington Street has been 1.3%. So that 2% is conservative. But I did know you asked that question, so I wanted to bring that point up before I forgot. And then when we met with VDOT as well, one of the big elements that came up, and I think something we heard from the community, was there's a lot of confusion and safety issues out there today with that one-way loop. It's marked as one-way loop, but people aren't really using it that way, and it adds to a lot of driver confusion and a lot of near misses, I would call them. And so one of the big things that we wanted to focus on was how can we improve the safety along that corridor? And by doing that, or in order to do that, we really tried to remove that, if you can kind of see that secondary entrance that was right by that other, oh, thank you.
I'll operate this one here.
Yeah, so removing that entrance because it doesn't meet spacing to that adjacent intersection that's right there. And then to make that intersection coming into the site a more traditional intersection that meets that driver expectation. So that was from the very beginning one of the things that VDOT really was pushing, and I think the town as well, because in our analysis, we look at it as a one-way loop, but in the field and with our counts, people were not following that traffic pattern. And then the other thing we looked at, because there was a lot of concern about Green Hill and a lot of concern about Blight, was how can we not overly impact one of those roads? And that's really why you have those two entrances, so you can disperse that traffic and minimize the impact. And it also, from a safety perspective, gives that secondary access if for something were to happen and something gets blocked, you have that point of relief. Specifically into the results for Blight and for Green Hill Crossing, I'll talk about Blight first. The impact, obviously, we're adding trips. There's going to be more trips. But the delay at both of those streets is really a product of the throughput on Washington. It's not necessarily because there's significantly high traffic from the side streets. So by adding these trips, the average delay per vehicle is about, well, I can give you the exact number. For Blight, it's about 2 seconds on average for each vehicle. So that queue isn't going to go from 1 to 2 cars to 10. It's going to stay in that 1 to 2 car range. It's just the traffic on Washington Street will continue to be there. For Green Hill Crossing, the impact is a little bit more. It's around 9 seconds on average. And that's not necessarily because we're adding a lot of traffic. It's because we're changing the dynamic of that intersection. There's now vehicles coming out, which our analysis does, I think, shows a greater impact because we didn't assume those cars coming out in the existing conditions, but in reality they were. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I know I kind of went quick, but the other thing I wanted to point out was something we heard kind of from the community and from the town was specifically for that crosswalk from Green Hill to the site. I think that was something that the residents were really pushing for so they could get to the commercial in a safe way. So that is something we added. It's subject to VDOT approval, but I think the way we would present it would to try and get an RRFB, which if you've seen, you press the push button and it has the flashing yellow lights. So trying to make a safe connection so residents can get to that commercial use.
We realign the entrance with Green Hill better.
Correct. Yeah, that existing entrance into the site is slightly offset from Green Hill, which adds to kind of that safety and conflict. So we did align that to make it direct, like center lines are aligned, and then adding those pedestrian crossings along that road as well, or pedestrian sidewalks along that road.
A follow-up question to that. So as it stands today, you kind of have a little bit of a triangulated traffic issue because you have people coming on and off of Blight Drive on the, as you're looking at it, I guess the northwestern side. Then you have Green Hill Crossing, people coming in and out and they're able to go left or right. And then you have this exit area. Again, this is today's model. So can you talk a little bit about how changing this entry exit point from a traffic engineering point of view, how that's going to create, if it's going to create a safer exiting strategy for this new intersection and how that plays into it?
Yeah, and like I said, that was a big point of emphasis for VDOT. They really were concerned about the existing safety issues at these entrances. I think specifically for this out right here, there's a turn lane existing going in here. There's this entrance here. So it's really easy for vehicles to not know if someone's going to cut in or cut out. And it's very easy for drivers not to expect and to look. And it's a big safety risk. And VDOT told us from the front, like, this is a big concern for us. And so by creating more of a traditional intersection, which is typical for along the corridor, it really just sets the driver expectation of knowing you're at an intersection, knowing to just be aware of potential conflicts, and reduces the number of conflict points, which then reduces what we would predict as future crashes.
Okay. And for the office building that sits just outside in the county line right there, is there exit area? Is that a right out only? Do you know?
It's a right in, right out.
Okay.
I don't
so
know
they
that
cannot go
people
left.
necessarily, again, follow
Fair,
it, but that
fair.
is how it's designed and
Fair.
designed.
Okay.
And that was one of the points is like people were coming out and someone could be coming out of here and turning left, and very easy to run into each other.
Okay. And then just for transparency's sake for everybody, can we talk about the crosswalk process and what that looks like going forward from today? I know we're saying we want a crosswalk. We have our community requesting it. And I know that the developer is looking at adding it in there, but can you speak to the VDOT process of crosswalks?
Yeah, so what the process is in order to get a crosswalk on a VDOT road at an uncontrolled location, you have to submit a crosswalk justification study. And typically those are done at site plan. They typically don't want them submitted at a rezoning because they want to know what the site's going to be. They want to know the conditions as it's being built. And so when you submit that study, you go in and you recommend what you think the type of crosswalk can be. There's different levels, the bare minimum being just striping. And then you get into some of those, not full signal, but like the push button and RRFBs. And you would recommend that to VDOT, and then they ultimately say yay or nay. VDOT's not installing it, but it's their road, so they have to approve it. And it's typically done at site plan.
Okay.
That, you going, the roundabout, is that also in that kind of, I think we talked about like a 20-year, is that the same thing or?
So that's for the
Okay.
existing roundabout that we studied, just to make
Gotcha.
sure. I think Jerome mentioned it at the last meeting. Roundabouts are great until they're not. Like it's kind of a big tipping point. So we just wanted to make sure it would continue to have that capacity, and the analysis showed that it was still operating acceptably.
I'm going to throw a few more questions your way since you're
Okay.
there. Okay, so in your traffic studies, and this is for our community's
Yeah.
sake, trying to learn and help share information and sources that we often look at when it comes in a study, but it's not always very clear for everyone. So when you guys take into consideration future growth, can you share with us along this route what future growth was taken into consideration? If there's any plans or projects that are currently in development or in process that we can say this was in fact taken into account?
So the only specific development that was taken into account was I forget the name of it, but the townhomes that
The 11
are-
townhomes off of Blight Drive?
Correct. So those were included because they specifically affect Blight Drive, and we wanted to make sure we were accounting for that. For throughput on Washington Street, we didn't include any of the specific projects because VDOT was comfortable that they were accounted for in the annual growth,
Okay.
2% that we were including in the study.
Okay.
So because they're just throughput on Washington Street, they felt comfortable that they would be included in there.
Okay. For your peak times and traffic studies, what is your peak morning time? What's that time frame? And then what's the peak afternoon, evening time?
You're asking me good questions. I know in the morning, and I can get the specific number if you can check, but we count for over a 3-hour period in the morning and the evening. And then based on the actual counts, whatever that peak hour, which here was 8 to 9. Thank you. I was like, I have it written down somewhere on my cheat sheet, but that's kind of how we scope it with VDOT. They want you to do it over what they would call the peak period. And then you define the peak hour based on the actual counts.
For our commissioners, those peak hours are listed on page 4 of the staff report.
Couple more questions.
I'm gonna grab my water real quick.
Yes, hydrate. Take a moment. So, as we've discussed this property, not only with this project the past couple months, but over the course of the past couple years, there's been conversation about, it's an open space. People in the community want to maintain it as such. So we are trying to share that this is a private property and that it is actually zoned B1. What would commercial development on this property look like when it is in terms of traffic and those trips onto and off of site?
So we just did a rough analysis of what could be built by right. So obviously there's a number of different uses, but just a general assessment of retail showed that, and I'll just do daily because it's easiest to talk about one number, but a typical residential development for B1 would probably generate around 4,100 trips. And then this is generating a little over 500 daily
Okay.
trips.
When you guys do traffic studies, do you also account for trips on site? So residential users utilizing that business commercial space? And is there any deduction in your numbers based on that?
We did take a small, I believe it was, let me give you this exact percentage, but you do take we did take an internal reduction is what it's called of residential and commercial users who would, a resident who would walk over to get food rather than having to drive there.
Okay.
So, and that's scoped again with VDOT. They have very strict requirements about when they would and would not require it. For instance, they didn't allow it in the morning because they didn't think that the morning would have any of those internal captures. So it was really a PM
PMR.
internal capture.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for you. I don't know if the commission does. I think the last thing I'll share, commissioners, is in my time here and discussions I've had with our police department, I will say that exit point that we currently have has been a serious problem and an issue. It's probably been 2 to 3 years back, we had a head-on collision there, and we've had other significant issues. We've even had people, this was probably more user error, but driving off into the stormwater drainage area. So certainly improvements to this property and the alignment of a proper entry-exit point will greatly benefit the town and the area, but still taking into consideration the traffic impact. So if you have any additional traffic impact questions, please by all means ask our applicant, and their team are here to address it for you.
Sure. And I guess I'll start with one. And I appreciate the questions, Emily, because those are similar along my mindset as well. I noted and I understood how it was scoped. The traffic counts collected weekday morning 6 to 9. Okay, that makes sense. The afternoon, I think it was 4 to 7 p.m. was the time period it was collected. And I guess the first part of that question, and then I have a question on the Saturday collected counts, was given, I guess you might think there's maybe an increase in school traffic around here. And I think the concerns that I've heard are, what about something like the 3 o'clock hour, which I know is kind of on the shoulder. It's on the earlier part of the evening peak period. But could you discuss if that was taken into consideration or discuss the scoping meeting?
It wasn't discussed at the scoping meeting. I will say from the 4 to 7 range, the peak hour wasn't 4, so it wasn't at that early range. And I think when we met, we didn't get into school, but it was thought that the commuting peak hour would really dictate the traffic here, so that's what was scoped.
That's understood, right? I guess, yeah, the concerted piece. The other question, I guess, going along with that would be the Saturday, which I understood typically a Saturday count time period would be more of a midday period, typically, right? So maybe like a 10 to 2, excuse me, type thing. But I noted it was counted from 4 to 7 p.m. there for the peak hour. Then, and again, could you explain maybe the justification of why that time period as opposed to the midday time period of the Saturday?
Yeah, so that was discussed at the scoping meeting, and we wanted to capture a time frame where we thought the peak of the site would be happening. I'll get into the weeds a little bit, but the Institute of Traffic Engineers, ITE, is what we use for generating traffic. They don't have as much detailed traffic on Saturday because the peak hours range so much more than a typical weekday with commuters. So we wanted to make sure that we're analyzing a time period that made sense for a peak of the site. And so that's kind of why we pushed it into later in the afternoon.
And why would that be considered the peak hour of the site?
Just if there's more restaurant uses, which I think is anticipated as cookies and cream, just that was kind of the feedback we got at the time.
Thank you.
I did have a question regarding the amount of round trips that you had mentioned. Looked like it was between 24 and 26 round trips between additional AM and PM. But seeing 58 townhomes, I'm just,
Yeah, and that's
Just have the
specific
question.
for that 1 hour. So in the peak period, there would be more, but most people go to work maybe between 7 and 8, but some go earlier, some go later, some work from home for a little bit, then go home. So it's dispersed throughout the day. So that's during that peak hour of the adjacent street. That's how many trips we would anticipate.
okay.
I think it was 800 and something for the day. wasn't it?
something like that. Yeah, but the peak hour specifically is just over that 1 hour.
Okay.
Maybe 500.
All right, well, and I just got more. I'm sorry, Kayla, I don't mean to make you come back. I apologize. That's. It's got more too. And again, yes, I mean, this has been, touched on again, as Emily's kind of brought up. I want to talk about the crosswalk specifically.
Yep.
And I understand obviously VDOT has the process, but they have increased in recent years to allow more flexibility
Yes.
of types of crosswalks and sort of things that, any kind of road, any amount of traffic could accommodate various types of crossings and crossing improvements. I guess my question here is, I note it's treated here as almost like a mid-block crossing. And I think that the reason of that, can you explain, is that to get the RRFB potentially? Is that a better justification? If it's
Yeah,
only on one side?
I don't know that I would call it mid-block, but yeah, VDOT has changed their guidelines and I think maybe 2 years ago, which makes it much more friendly for pedestrians. They're a little bit behind, but they've caught up and they're trying to be, make it easier to get crosswalks where they make sense. Specifically for RRFBs, and this is just my personal experience, I've never seen them approve them on both sides. They want pedestrians channeled to one crossing location so that if someone presses the button, vehicles know to stop and they're not going through one and then immediately having another one where they need to stop. So my opinion is, if in order to get the RFB, you would need to include it on one location, and I don't know that VDOT would approve it on both.
Right. And it's understood that this is not a mid-block crossing. This is an intersection.
But it's a similar process.
Right, but
yeah.
it's similar in that idea. And I was just curious because you go up the road, say Hunting Path on Washington Street, that's an unsignalized intersection. That has crosswalks on each leg. Why couldn't we do that here? Potentially.
You potentially could. I just think there's a benefit of the RRFB personally, just because I think this is a slightly longer crossing distance than up the street. And then, if you do have those flashing lights going and something's crossing, it also has the secondary benefit of creating gaps. And if you're coming out of Green Hill Crossing, you can take a left out of there. So that's not the reason for it, but there is a secondary benefit to it.
Right. Thank you for explaining
Sure.
that front. There's the questions there. And I think the last one I had, I didn't get a chance to get into it, I think in previous meetings, just a clarification on the parking study, that justification. So we're going to the parking now. I noted, I think in the appendix of that study with, I believe, the ULI references, Urban Land Institute references, for health club use, which is what you were assuming for jujitsu and things like that. There was also a portion for, I think, employee parking as well as users. But I noted in the final version of this document here, it didn't account for the employees, which I understand maybe is not a high number, but could you provide just clarification on that front, why the employees are not counted for health club?
I'd have to look back into it. Let me check, but I did want to just note, we did that shared parking study just to understand when the peaks would be. We are meeting the parking code, so we're not asking for a shared parking reduction. We were just curious kind of with the variable uses, what time of day the parking might be peaking. I think the employee number was just somewhat negligible, that we included them in with the users and used that time of day curve, but I'll have to double check, but that's my assumption.
Sure. And there was, as I understood, there was a surplus of parking available under
Yes.
those assumptions, that even if you were to account for perhaps other parking, maybe there's a range maybe on that front.
Correct.
But thank you for that clarification.
Scared to walk away.
Any questions? Okay, then I want to switch gears, I think, let's again, the commission's here. I think that in the question here with this, rezoning, kind of the question of height. I understand, as a zoning ordinance, I believe it's 35 feet is the maximum height. You can increase that if you increase your side setbacks, which I believe are occurring here. I was just curious, do you have, maybe for staff, if you have the numbers of the rough heights of the developments around here? Because roughly when I was looking at it, I saw something, and again, I understand it's different zoning, I understand it's different pieces, it's more historical in that regard, but I was seeing the more as like 25 or 30 feet versus 35 feet. Could you speak to that and kind of staff's thoughts on that front?
and then I will give you an answer.
Yeah, I don't have that one off the top of my head, but we can find it.
Sure. Well, I think the next question was maybe towards density, again, but I think, in terms of similar densities, just on those two. Because again, the way I see it, that's the zoning question at hand. Again, there's many ways to look at this, but that's the one thing I've been noting.
If the commission has any other questions, we can move on to the next question while we get this answer for you.
Anybody has any other questions?
Okay.
I would just like to make a comment, just thank Greystone and Kirk and Siobhan for your team, for all the revisions and everything you've done to help kind of get the right idea for what would be best for the community, traffic, housing. So just want to thank you guys for just being open and helping the customers that are currently at the site and, helping the town with the streetscapes and all that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're also looking at okay, so looking at the plans for Alexandria's Keep, which is just to the rear of the development, the allowable heights are at 37.5 feet.
And to give some context for everyone in the room, Alexandra's Keep was, let me tell you the year on that. 2009, 2008, 2009 was when an approval was done. And so at that time, our zoning ordinance had different regulations. We went through proper protocol and have done updates since. So just for kind of that visual, if you're thinking about this development and then the row of townhomes that sits right behind it, so those are at 37.5 feet from grade. And so this would be a little bit similar. The townhouses in those first two rows in front of Alexandra's Keep, the topography there does sit a little bit lower. So you do also have that to keep in mind. For density, Alexandra's Keep, similar density to what's being proposed here, surrounding neighborhoods. So on the top of the screen there, you have the Villages of Haymarket neighborhood. So that density is single detached, but it is it R2 zoning there?
Yes.
Haymarket Station is R2 zoning, and that is on the south side of Washington Street, also still single family detached. And then you have Green Hill Crossing is the R1, and those are single family detached. And there's a few townhomes that are located within the town right across the street there along Gap Way at Green Hill Crossing Drive.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think also those other single family like detached type homes will be short height, just given the nature of what those structures are. those houses and such.
And another more recent example of similar height and density would be the Crossroads Village Center townhomes that are over here behind the Chick-fil-A and behind those multi-use tenant buildings. So they went through a very similar process when it came to a height waiver and height discussion. And they followed the same requirement in the zoning ordinance regarding the extension of side yards.
Thank you, right. And of course, those being near the interchange as opposed to where this location is. But again,
Yes.
it is noted. So, okay, are there any other outstanding questions, fellow commissioners? We're ready to move forward with it, I guess, on the recommendation. And I will say, if I may, that, I mean, this site in Haymarket it's had its history, right? It's been thought of as deeply commercial within this decade. It's been, many things have kind of come and gone, different thoughts, different ideas for it. It has its challenges. And I think the biggest question comes down to the way I see it, is it appropriate for a comp plan designation to go from kind of public, which kind of mixed use thing, to moderate residential density? Perhaps that's a good question there. But then the other question is the sort of change in the zoning district, a question of height, of density, if we think that's appropriate. However, all that being said, I know the applicant, we're very appreciative of the work you've done over this past better part of a year probably, and the improvements to the streetscape. And, kind of that maximize the mixed use, crosswalks and sidewalks and such on site, these different pieces. So therefore, I think having thought about it, I will move to recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval the Town Council of rezoning number 2025-001, rezoning for 14600 Washington Street. I don't.
We're gonna have you read a resolution. If you would like, can we take a 5-minute recess so you have a moment to read?
Sure. Yes, let's do that. 5-minute recess then. Thank you. Okay, so we'll return, and I wish to strike my previous motion and make the new motion. So I'll now read the resolution. So the resolution recommendation, approval of Schoolhouse Commons rezoning. Whereas the Code of Virginia empowers the Haymarket Planning Commission to review land use applications to ensure the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. And whereas the town has adopted a zoning ordinance codified as Article 1 through 19 of Chapter 58 of the Town Code of Ordinances for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and of further accomplishing the objectives of the Code of Virginia 15.2-2200 and 15.2-2283. And whereas the Code of Virginia provides that a zoning ordinance may include provisions for the granting of rezoning, and the governing body of any city, county, or town may reserve unto itself the right to issue such special exemptions. And whereas the Supreme Court of Virginia has consistently held the exercise of that power to be a legislative rather than an administrative act, and whereas the Haymarket Planning Commission has reviewed rezoning number 2025-001 for rezoning of 7.25 acres of an 8.84 acre property to include 58 residential townhomes at 14600 Washington Street, and whereas the rezoning number 2025-001 application allows for the remaining 1.59 acres to remain as B1 for approximately 31,000 square feet of commercial space at 14600 Washington Street. And whereas the applicant has provided the amendment to zoning map application dated September 25th, 2025, and a generalized development plan dated October 2nd, 2025. And whereas the site is currently zoned B1 and remains in the historic overlay district, and whereas the town of Haymarket duly ordered, advertised, and held public hearing January 20th, 2026, at which time public testimony was received and the merits of the above referenced case were considered. And whereas town staff recommends that the Haymarket Planning Commission recommend approval of this amendment to zoning map application for the reasons stated in the staff report. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Haymarket Planning Commission that in order to promote good zoning practices, Town of Haymarket Comprehensive Plan and Strategic Plan, it is recommended that the application rezoning number 2025-001 for the rezoning of 7.25 acres of commercial property and inclusion of 58 townhomes at 14600 Washington Street be approved. A point of order, doesn't there need to be a second?
So I second that motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Before we vote, is there any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, and I've spoken my piece from before. Alexandra, if you could please open the voting. Yes, please. We all have access to login?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. Baker, yay. Young, yay. Kress, nay. Homer, yay. Gonzalez, yay.
All right.
So the motion carries with 4 yeas and 1 nay.
All right, thank you. So now it's on to the town council for that one. And our, sorry,
I was just gonna, for everybody here, kind of give an update. So with this recommendation for approval to the town council, the application will now move to the town council. We will have a discussion at our April work session of setting a public hearing for that application. And there will be a second public hearing for the town council to hear all public comment on it. And so if anybody's watching and interested in a date, just stay tuned. We will be posting the public hearing date. It'll go out in the general paper as well as on our website and other media outlets.
thank you. We're next in the agenda. Is the last agenda item here, and we'll give people a few moments to clear out as needed, is the capital improvement plan.
Can we grab the plans out real quick while everyone's leaving and I'll pass them.
Okay, so we had started discussing the capital improvements plan draft at our last meeting, and I told you guys I would bring it back to you this evening. So what you have in front of you is the current draft. The items that are marked in the reddish orange color are those that are being recommended for removal. Some of them are being removed based on that they are completed, and so they're no longer needing to be carried there. We're not yet into a replacement phase for those projects that were more recently completed, or a replacement is not applicable, such as the demolition of the Park House. Other items that I have put in here for potential removal, so the crosswalk improvements, the signage and markings specifically. Signage and markings are handled through VDOT, and so I'm going to be discussing with the town council if they want to carry this area, this line item. In the past, VDOT has not been supportive of us putting in additional crosswalk measures, such as flashing lights or other different kinds of beacons or I would say safety devices. So again, a discussion with the town council. We do still we still have crosswalk repair maintenance right under there. So these crosswalks would be the ones that the town maintains. They're usually the painted crosswalks. We do have some areas that are showing significant deterioration and will need replacement sooner rather than later. But again, still looking to bump that out to 2028, 2029. Next section, street sidewalks and parking. So I added in the two sections here for Jefferson Street sidewalk improvements and Fayette Street sidewalk improvements. I've not assigned a year or a dollar value yet. These will be two discussion points with our town council based on conversations and recommendations from the Planning Commission. The Haymarket Park sidewalk to Blight Drive, this was completed, so this will be removed out. The town center property, so you'll see some significant work happening on that this coming fiscal year. So we'll be going into site plan construction. We're also looking at doing a joint lobby entry for our administrative offices and the police department. So that is included in here as well, and some security upgrades. The demolition of the Park House project has been completed, so this will be removed. We are looking to award a contract for an engineering firm to do the engineering design phase of the town park site plan. We are hopeful that that will be awarded and work will begin on that in next fiscal year. The construction of that site plan would happen following the full engineering and design phase, so that could happen as early as 2027 and 2028, but I will say it is more likely that it'll happen 28 and 29 and future years. So that'll be a discussion with council of where they want to earmark those funds. The signage above Town Hall and the police department, again, project completed and can be removed. If we go with a single lobby entry point, that signage will be combined and we'll get it remounted on the building. I have put in here to remove the VDOT Historic District signage. So at this time, the town of Haymarket is unable to meet the current threshold requirements to be eligible for this program and this type of signage. It has to do with state and federal historic status. The electronic message boards, this would be something that we need to determine if our town council and ultimately all boards of the town are interested in. So currently we don't allow for electronic message boards. These would be such like a community board that we can change the message from a computer or internet-based site. And it could say things such as Planning Commission meeting tonight at Town Hall at 7 p.m. Right now we do sandwich board signs out front. And so I am going to discuss with council if this is a project that they would be interested in. If so, I recommend including it into the town park engineering phase and the appropriate work for this town center site plan construction. For administrative, the town website has been revamped and redesigned, so this can be removed. That was done within our contract that we hold with our current provider. We are looking at obtaining a new maintenance vehicle. We are trying to accomplish that this fiscal year. If it is not able to be accomplished in the next 2.5 months, we will be looking to move that forward to next fiscal year. Police department awning has been completed and will be removed. Everything else within the police department, chief has put in here, and these are based on what he has requested from council. And then the new message board trailer, that project also has been completed and can be removed. Lastly, with public parking, I will be discussing with the town council, removing this section or putting a different placeholder regarding public parking. At this time, the town's adopted strategic plan does not have public parking as a top priority. I will say that we're still evaluating what this site will look like post-construction, and if there's ample parking that in those high peak times, people could just utilize our property right here to park. So still a discussion being had. If there's any recommendations or questions, please let me know. Happy to discuss.
So Emily, I think last time you mentioned, besides the sidewalk here on Jefferson, the area near the tracks, the railroad tracks, that there was some other project, maybe discussion with the county or something?
Yes, so that is one that I need to add here under capital improvements in coordination with grant funding. I did not yet have a date on that, but I will add that right now. It's under that very last line item on page 2. And then the other one I'll be adding is the Old Carolina, I guess it's a shared use path, I think is what they're putting in on the north side. And the county's doing that. It's not with grant funding, I don't believe, but I'll get those details and add that in there. Neither of them, though, require town funding. So I need to work with council on how they want to demonstrate that.
Another general question, just out of curiosity. So the other street right here, as you go up, there's where the School of Rock is. Huge parking lot. Hardly anybody's ever parked in there except some trailers and stuff. Is that privately owned parking lot? Like
It is. Yes.
it should
So
has the stanchions that are there to keep people from coming in, but it's
it's an interesting,
it's-
can you can you turn the projector on for a second?
Yeah, it's an interesting part of the town.
If we have a moment, I would like to show you,
Are we taking a field trip?
no, field trip to the projector.
The screen. It'll be on the
Virtual
screen.
field trip.
Who's driving?
Yeah. Alexandra's driving.
Can't exactly take the camera with this.
I know we've talked about, something hear me. I know we've talked about public parking in the past, and I live here on Jefferson, and I walk around the block all the time. I see that parking lot. And there's like a few trailers sitting there. And it's like all this parking, like, but they're stanchions keep you from coming in. Like, why is this not being used? Like, it's right there. So, just curious.
It'd be good to know the history of it too. I know since I think at least 2019, if not earlier, you've had those kind of stanchions and that kind of separation, and it's good to know.
Okay, I'm gonna. Educational,
Let's do it.
historic moment. Okay, so the property in question is here. This is the parking lot. So you'll see the blue line outlining it. So the reason there's stanchions here is because this is privately owned by the,
I can't see the blue. Where's the blue?
Really faint.
Yeah, okay. No, I can see.
I see it.
so this is owned by Piedmont Tire and Auto, who also owns Haymarket Iceplex. So the issue they were having 5-6 years ago, it feels like at this point, Katie, yeah, 5 or 6 years ago, was that they had way too much parking, not enough parking, way too many people to park at the ice rink. And so they were needing overflow parking. They also have that same problem at Piedmont Tire and Auto. So they came to the Winterham property and they acquired this back parking lot, and then they did a site plan and they finished this portion out to have this site plan. What was originally in place, the original site plan for Winterham, was you have this existing structure. So it has commercial on the bottom, and then it has 2 stories of condos above it. I believe it's 2 stories above. And there is going to be a mirrored building right here. This one was actually going to be larger, and it had commercial on the bottom and then additional floors of condos above it. And then there was supposed to be possibly a 3rd building that went in place back here behind the historic house. So they've purchased this off. That 3rd building won't go in. There is still potential that this one could go in, and then it has the shared parking. So all of this area here is what we consider Winterham property. So if we ever refer to Winterham, that's this. That was the old Dr. Payne who owned the Winterham house. And so this was the doctor in town. It was a very nice manor style property. And then these developers came in, ultimately saved the house, and then put the design in for these 2 larger structures. So no, this is not public parking. Piedmont Tire and Auto uses it. I do know they kind of work with some of the industrial people that are located down here. And occasionally I see that maybe they're renting some space there as well. But it's really supposed to be for the hockey rink and overflow of Piedmont Tire and Auto. But great question. And that's why you have stanchions. So you only are supposed to enter from this side. Any other questions while I'm here? Any other areas you want to talk about?
Nope, thank you very much.
Alex, will you zoom out actually for me? Just CIP related. I'll show you relation when I'm talking about, zoom out one more click for me. I know it's a little fuzzy. The green is the Haymarket Museum for relation and bearings. So this is Fayette Street. So when I put in the CIP that we wanted to recommend to the town council to consider sidewalks, so the areas that don't have sidewalks on Fayette Street are this area right here, pretty much from Gotham Manor Drive all the way down to Washington Street. And then there's another portion on the south side. There's a small sidewalk that picks up along here in front of the St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and carried to full term in this area. And then it's connected here. However, on the opposite side of the street in front of the McCormick House and St. Michael's Academy, there is no sidewalk. So there's a discussion of having our sidewalk properly continued from the museum all the way down to where it would meet up with what this neighborhood had put in when they built out. And then on Jefferson Street, the portion of the sidewalk we're referencing is between Payne Lane and approximately the 3rd parcel down. There is a very small sidewalk at the corner of Payne and Jefferson, and then it comes around the 1st parcel, and then it pretty much goes away on the next 2 parcels. So having that proper sidewalk connectivity, if you have that done, if you'll zoom out probably 2 more clicks. That's good, actually. If you have that small portion done right here, you would ultimately have a full connection point from Somerset Crossing all the way up to Heathcote up here once the county does those 2 projects I just referenced prior to standing up. And so once that's fully connected there, you have full north, south, east, and west connectivity into the county. And then getting to Somerset Crossing can get you over to like Leopold's Preserve, all on pedestrian connectivity. It can get you back into Gainesville. And then same thing, if you get up to Heathcote, you'll be able to get all the way over to the hospital, full pedestrian connectivity, all the way down to 29. So if that gives you kind of relations of what we're attempting.
Thank you.
And I would speak probably the extensive, even if you went down Heathcote 29, you could go around University and wrap back around through Virginia Gateway and come back into town. That's part of the idea. It's a journey, but that's wide regional connectivity.
Yes. Any other CIP questions, recommendations, requests?
I just have a question about the signage for
The electronic
Yeah.
signage? Mhm.
Or do we control that, or how does?
Yes, so if you're familiar, so I'm trying to think of a local town, Manassas. Manassas has it, I think. Yeah. So Manassas has some pretty nice monument signs, electronic message boards. So when you're driving into one of their entry points into the city, they'll have messages posted, events that might be happening, public meetings that might be happening. If there was an emergency alert, safety alert, it could also be posted on there. So that would be something that we could consider. I know previously speaking, they were not necessarily interested in it, they being the Architectural Review Board, because electronic message boards aren't always considered a historic feature. So there was a little bit of pushback in that sense. But I think there's a conversation to be had, and as our council liaison, by all means, feel free to have this conversation as well with council members. That is it a discussion about how we're better able to advertise? Are we able to have better meeting notifications or community notifications in that manner when we have so many people driving through the town? It doesn't have to be all the locations, but maybe there's a central location such as out front town hall that we look at doing that.
I think it's a great idea. Just easier to get the information out and from everybody coming in. So thank you.
Mhm.
I just had a question on that front too. I believe you may have touched on it, that this kind of would tie together with kind of that kind of gateway sign program showing that you're entering the town. I'm sorry if I missed that, if you were just discussing that earlier about town signage, Emily. Is that the idea, like sort of like entries into the town saying, hey, you're now in the town of Haymarket? That's
Yes,
kind of the push there, right?
Yes,
Did
it
I hear
would
that
kind of
correctly?
tie into that, and also help us advertise, not just welcome to town, but, here's what's going on. Yep, farmer's market, Haymarket Day. Yeah, and so we're just, for example, that type of board, that might be better fit at the park. Maybe we don't want it in the core of town at town hall. Maybe it's the park we have messages there.
Definitely a discussion that needs to be had.
Mhm.
Right. There's kind of the flyboard, the lo-fi, you mentioned the sandwich boards, and as it's out there, and even there is a bulletin board at Town Park right now,
Yes.
which does actually stay pretty well informed on that front, I will say. But I wonder if it's balancing that, obviously the vehicles driving through here, but also the kind of walkable aspects that people could walk and get this information in some manner. Those kind of modal considerations, which is what I still think the overall CIP kind of speaks to. If you
Yes.
consider all of these fundings over the years, it's trying to reinforce that kind of walkability piece of it with design, with enforcement, with education, all those kind of pieces. But certainly to be sure to keep that in mind, I would think.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions on the CIP?
If
Anyone here?
There's
Okay.
no other questions. So just so everyone's aware, I will take this to the April 27th work session with the town council. We will further discuss it, and then I will report back to planning commission after our budget's passed and what our final CIP looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think with that, we'll now jump into the old business portion of the meeting.
Sorry. Let me flip through all my notes here. So in terms of old business, let me first start with that we had a fantastic first day opening farmers market this past Sunday. We had 52 vendors. It was a beautiful day out, and we hope to see everyone this Sunday at the next farmers market going forward. Some stuff going on in town. In regards to the EPA grant that you had mentioned earlier, Walt, they will be out roughly at the end of April. Let me confirm those dates really quick. Between the 20th and the 22nd, they're estimating work. The surveying crew will take 2 to 3 days roughly. We've coordinated with the Haymarket Police Department to provide any additional assistance so as not to impede traffic and to keep the surveyors safe. Notifications went out to residents and to business owners that surveyors would be on site. If you see them, give them a wave. In terms of other things going on in town, I'm actually trying to think about what to update. We had a secondary violation, zoning violation go out. So we're waiting on work to continue with that. Like Emily has previously mentioned, the park RFPs are continuing forward. Interviews will be scheduled in due time. You're on Friday. Look at that. Perfect. We have some other projects in town that are starting to wrap up. We have work going forward with Robinson Paradise, work going forward with potentially on Jordan Lane, on the other side of Robinson Paradise, on the other side of 66. Some work going on down on Fayette Street with 2 lots down there. And then, of course, the big rezoning that will now be going to town council. I don't think I have anything else.
And
Oh,
there's the waterway study
the EPA grant. Yeah.
between Jefferson and Fayette Street.
Yeah, the surveyors will be out on April 20th to the 22nd. And everybody was residents and business owners were informed regarding that. They estimated work would take between 2 to 3 days. And they'll be traveling from Somerset Crossing all the way up Jefferson, across Washington Street, into behind Pups Valley and the CVC townhomes. I am working towards doing some more research going forward for the comprehensive plan, getting some background on comprehensive plans that are in the area, including Middleburg, the town of Warrington, Percival, and a couple other places, just getting some background as Emily and I start to work towards getting that further along. I've also been working on the zoning ordinance and making sure that definitions align and working toward definitions and the use chart align, as well as looking towards updating the zoning ordinance for murals and public art to be displayed in town, because I think that is something that we've discussed in the past and that residents have asked for. Beautification of the town is incredibly important, and murals such as that can represent the cultural history of the town. The Haymarket Hotel and Retail site that is on the CVC area behind the CVS, the preliminary plan for the retail has been recommended for approval, and so we will go into the site plan phase. I do have an update for the hotel. Previously, the hotel had an SUP to allow for 6 stories. The last submission had recognized that it was 6 stories, and this updated submission was 5 stories. So whether or not they choose to use that SUP is up to them, but they have lowered the height since the last submission. And we're working on providing comments back for them about that. I don't think I have anything else.
Any questions? And on that, so that SUP is still valid?
Yeah, the SUP is still valid. I believe there's no sunset clause on that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I probably will speak to just generally on the art piece of it. I mean, certainly the history and the people
Mhm.
of the town of Haymarket, I think is very important. So it's good to hear on that front. And with no other questions or comments, I think we can jump into new business now on the agenda here.
I don't know. Did we receive anything new? I don't think so. No, we don't have any new business at this time. There is a lot going on in the town we've been working towards quite a bit of it. We've had some new businesses open in the town, and some businesses that are planned to be opening soon in town. So hopefully I'll have some update on when those will be opening up soon for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And if no other questions or comments, I believe we'll now turn to ARB updates, which I believe is Commissioner Kress, right? Do I have that right?
Yes, but that's okay.
Well.
So at our last ARB meeting, we had two. We had two applications on the docket. Both of them were solar. One was for the new daycare that opened in the CBC, and the other one was for residential in Green Hill Crossing. Both of them were approved. They abided by ARB guidelines, and they were ultimately approved.
Thank you, Lydia.
You're welcome. We also discussed the art and murals and the zoning update for that during the meeting as well.
Thank you. And any questions on that front? Hearing and seeing none, I think we'll now turn to a town council update. So Councilmember Baker.
Yes, thank you. So last council meeting, proclamation went out for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Lydia also mentioned we had our first farmers market that went well. We also spoke about the property tax for fiscal year 26-27. And then an important event that's coming up is the Bob Weir Open Government Day, April 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. I think that's pretty much. Turn it back to you.
Thank you. Councilmember, any questions, any thoughts? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, now we're at the point. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Okay, first, do I have a second?
Oh, second.
I second that motion.
Thank you, thank you. It's moved in second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.